The morning sun streamed through the blinds of Metro General Hospital as Maya Johnson sipped her coffee, savoring the few minutes of quiet before her shift began. At 42, she had the confident movements of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. 15 years as a nurse had taught her how to navigate the busy hallways, the beeping machines, and the countless human stories that unfolded within these walls. "Morning, Maya," called Nurse Patel from the staff lounge. "Ready for another day?" Maya smiled, her warm brown eyes crinkling at the corners. "Always am. What's on the board today?" "Same as always. Too many patients, not enough of us," Nurse Patel replied with a tired smile. "But there's a new admission coming in from the ER. Some kind of motorcycle accident. No ID, no family yet." Maya nodded, finishing her coffee. She was used to these cases. People brought in from the chaos of life outside, sometimes alone, often scared. It was the part of nursing that went beyond the charts and medications, the human part. An hour into her shift, Maya was checking on Mrs. Rodriguez in room 204 when her supervisor, Diane, appeared at the door. "Maya, I need you in room 312. The motorcycle accident from this morning. The patient is stabilized, but giving the staff a hard time. You have a way with the difficult ones." Maya raised an eyebrow. "What kind of difficult?" "The kind that won't speak to anyone, won't answer questions about family contacts, and nearly threw a cup at Dr. Phillips." Maya sighed, but there was a slight smile on her face. The difficult ones were often just frightened or in pain. Sometimes they just needed someone who would see past the behavior to the person underneath. Room 312 was at the end of the hall, one of the private rooms reserved for patients who needed extra monitoring. Maya checked the chart outside the door first. Male, approximately 35-40 years old, multiple injuries from motorcycle accident, spinal cord damage with paralysis from the chest down, prognosis unclear, name John Doe. Maya knocked softly before entering. The room was dim, with the blinds drawn against the bright afternoon sun. The man in the bed lay still, his face turned toward the window. From the doorway, Maya could see the strong line of his jaw, tensed as if he was bracing against pain, and the dark hair that fell across his forehead. "Good afternoon," she said, keeping her voice gentle but matter-of-fact. "I'm Maya Johnson. I'll be your nurse for the next 8 hours." The man didn't turn his head, but Maya saw his eyes flick toward her briefly before returning to the window. "I know you're probably tired of answering questions," she continued, moving into the room to check his IV and monitors. "So I won't ask any right now. I'm just going to check your vitals and make sure you're comfortable." As she worked, Maya maintained a quiet, steady monologue, explaining what she was doing without requiring responses. She noticed how his body remained tense, how his eyes seemed to track her movements despite his apparent disinterest. There was intelligence in those eyes, and something else. Fear, perhaps, or grief. "You've got quite a few injuries," Maya said as she checked the bandages on his arm. "But Dr. Wilson is one of our best. If anyone can help with your spine, it's her." For the first time, the man spoke. His voice was low and rough, as if unused. "They said I won't walk again." Maya paused, looking directly at him. "They said it's unlikely based on the current damage. But the human body is a surprising thing. I've seen patients defy every prediction." The man finally turned to look at her fully. His eyes were a startling blue against his pale face. "You're the first person who hasn't promised me a miracle, or looked at me with pity." Maya smiled slightly. "I don't do pity, and miracles are above my pay grade. What I can offer is honest care, and my best work to help you recover whatever function is possible." Something in his face changed. Not quite a smile, but a slight easing of the tension around his eyes. "I appreciate that." Maya nodded and continued her work. When she finished, she paused at the door. "I didn't catch your name." There was a long pause before he answered. "David, just David for now." Over the next few weeks, Maya found herself increasingly drawn to room 312. David remained a mystery. He answered personal questions vaguely or not at all, had no visitors, and the hospital administration was still trying to determine his insurance status. But during Maya's shifts, he would talk to her. First about small things, the weather, the food, the constant noise of the hospital, and then about books and ideas. Maya learned he was well-read, with a deep knowledge of technology and science. He asked thoughtful questions about her work and listened intently to her answers. What he never discussed was his past or how he had ended up alone on that road. Other staff began to avoid his room. David could be cutting with doctors who talked around him rather than to him, and coldly dismissive of nurses who treated him with automatic cheerfulness. With Maya, though, he was different, respectful of her expertise and gradually more open. One evening, Maya stayed past her shift to help David with his physical therapy exercises. His recovery was progressing slowly, with little improvement in his paralysis but gradual healing of his other injuries. "You should go home," David said, watching as Maya adjusted the position of his legs. "Your shift ended an hour ago," Maya smiled. "How would you know that?" "I pay attention," he replied. "The night nurse usually comes in at 7, but it's 8 now and you're still here. Well, these exercises are important and you seem to be having a good day. I wanted to take advantage of that." David was quiet for a moment, watching her work with an unreadable expression. "You have a life outside this place, family waiting for you." It wasn't quite a question, but Maya answered anyway. "My son Andre is 16. He's at basketball practice tonight, then studying with friends. My mother lives with us too. She had a small stroke last year." "That's a lot of responsibility," Maya shrugged. "It's life. We make it work." As weeks turned into months, Maya became David's primary caregiver by unspoken agreement. She noticed how he tracked the time when she wasn't there, how he seemed to save his questions and thoughts for her shifts. She began bringing him books from the public library, technical journals, biographies, history. Once she brought a novel her book club was reading, and they found themselves discussing it during quiet moments of her shifts. In turn, David began helping Maya with Andre's math homework, explaining complex concepts through Maya when she mentioned her son was struggling with calculus. His explanations were so clear that Maya started recording them on her phone to play back for Andre. "You should be a teacher," Maya told him one day. A shadow passed over David's face. In another life, perhaps. It was during this time that Diane, Maya's supervisor, called her into her office. "I'm concerned about your involvement with the patient in 312, Diane said, her expression serious. "You're spending too much time there, staying past your shifts." "David needs the extra attention," Maya argued. "The physical therapy is helping and—" "David," Diane interrupted, "has been here for over 3 months with no clear payment source. The administration is talking about transferring him to County General. And you're getting too invested in a patient who, frankly, we know nothing about." Maya felt a surge of protectiveness. "He's making progress. A transfer could set him back significantly." "That's not your decision to make," Diane said gently. "I understand you care, Maya. That's what makes you an excellent nurse. But you need to maintain professional boundaries." But that night, as Maya helped David through a particularly painful therapy session, seeing the determination in his eyes as he attempted to feel sensation in his legs, she knew she had crossed a line from professional care to personal investment. And when the hospital administrator informed her the following week that David would indeed be transferred to the state facility within days due to his unresolved payment status, Maya made a decision that would change both their lives forever. What if there was another option? She asked David, her heart racing at her own audacity. "I have experience as a home health nurse. I could continue your care." "At my home?" David stared at her, his blue eyes widening in surprise. "Why would you do that?" Maya considered her answer carefully. "Because you deserve better than being shuffled around the system. Because I believe you can make more progress with consistent care." She paused. "And because I think you're someone worth helping." What Maya couldn't know was that the quiet man in the hospital bed, the one who spoke so little of himself, was David Harrington, founder of Horizon Technologies and one of the wealthiest men in the country, a man who had been living in self-imposed isolation for years, testing an experimental vehicle in secret when the accident occurred, a man who, for the first time in a very long time, was seeing the world through new eyes, through the care of a nurse who saw him not as a billionaire, not as a success story, but simply as a human being worthy of dignity and second chances. Maya's small apartment had never felt so cramped. The living room, once a cozy space where her family watched TV and played board games, was now transformed into a makeshift recovery room. A hospital bed occupied the center, surrounded by medical equipment that beeped and hummed day and night. "Mom, are you sure about this?" Andre asked, helping her arrange the medical supplies on a shelf they'd cleared of books and family photos. At 16, he was 80 taller than Maya. With his father's height and her determination, His expression was skeptical as he looked around their changed home. "I'm sure," Maya replied, though the knot in her stomach suggested otherwise. The hospital administration had been shocked when she submitted her leave of absence. Her colleagues thought she had lost her mind. "You barely know this guy," Andre continued. "And now he's living in our house?" Maya paused, choosing her words carefully. "Sometimes in life we have to follow our instincts. My instinct says David needs help that he won't get in a state facility." Andre shrugged, unconvinced. "It's your call, but I don't get why you're risking your job for a stranger." Maya didn't have a logical answer, only a feeling, a certainty that had grown over the months of caring for David. There was something about him, a depth and intelligence behind his reserve, that made her believe he deserved a chance. David arrived by medical transport later that afternoon. The process of moving him was difficult, highlighting just how serious his injuries were. Once settled in the hospital bed, he looked around the apartment with unreadable eyes. "This is too much," he said quietly to Maya when the transport team had left. "Your family shouldn't have to rearrange their lives." "We'll manage," Maya said firmly. "The important thing is your recovery." That first week tested everyone's patience. Maya's mother, Ruth, watched from her bedroom doorway with concerned eyes as Maya struggled to establish a care routine. Andre stayed out later with friends, coming home only to sleep, avoiding the stranger in their living room. David himself was silent much of the time, his face tight with pain and what Maya recognized as shame. He hated needing help with the most basic functions, hated the loss of privacy, hated imposing on this family that had already done so much. "You should go back to work," he told Maya one evening as she checked his vital signs. "This arrangement isn't sustainable." Maya shook her head. "I've taken a 3-month leave. We'll reassess then." What she didn't tell him was that the leave was unpaid, that her savings would only stretch so far, that she had already canceled her night classes in nursing administration, classes she'd been taking for 3 years, working toward a promotion that now seemed impossibly distant. By the second week, a routine began to form. Maya's mother, initially wary, started engaging with David, bringing him tea and talking about the garden she had once kept. Andre, discovering that David knew advanced math, began bringing his homework problems to him. "How do you know all this stuff?" Andre asked one evening, amazed at how David had explained a complex calculus problem with ease. David's eyes flickered. "I had a good education. Were you like a professor or something?" "Something like that," David replied and changed the subject. Maya noticed these exchanges, curious about the parts of himself David kept hidden. But she didn't press. Everyone had the right to their privacy, even in these unusual circumstances. As the first month passed, the financial strain became impossible to ignore. The specialized equipment, the medications, the extra utilities, it all added up to more than Maya had anticipated. She found herself at the kitchen table late at night, calculator in hand, moving numbers around like pieces on a chessboard, trying to make them work out differently. One night, David caught her at it, unable to sleep due to pain. "Maya," he said quietly, making her jump. "You're in financial trouble because of me," she tried to smile. "It's temporary. I'm just figuring things out. I see the bills. I see you selling things. Yesterday it was your watch." Maya looked down at her bare wrist where the watch her father had given her for nursing school graduation had been. "It was just a watch." "It was more than that," David said. His blue eyes were intent on her face. "Why are you doing this, really?" Maya considered the question. "When I was 7, she finally said, I broke my arm falling from a tree. The nurse who took care of me was kind in a way no one had ever been to me before. She explained everything she was doing, talked to me like I mattered. I decided then that's who I wanted to be." She looked at him directly. "Every person deserves care. Not just the easy patients or the wealthy ones, everyone, that's what I believe." David was silent for a long time. "You're extraordinary," he said finally. "But this can't continue. I'll contact the hospital tomorrow about the state facility." "No," Maya said firmly. "We had an agreement. 3 months, then we reassess. I keep my promises." The next day, Maya made a difficult decision. She drove to the car dealership and sold her car, a 7-year-old sedan she'd maintained meticulously. The money would cover 2 more months of expenses if they were careful. She took the bus home, rehearsing how she would explain this to her family. But when she arrived, she found something unexpected. Laughter coming from the living room. Andre was sitting beside David's bed, both of them hunched over what looked like a makeshift engineering project made from household items. Mom. Andre looked up, excited. David's helping me with my science project. We're building a small motor that runs on salt water. He says it could win first prize. David's face held something Maya hadn't seen before. Animation, engagement. A spark of the man he might have been before the accident. The weeks that followed brought subtle changes. David began participating in family meals, eaten around his hospital bed. He listened intently as Ruth told stories of the civil rights movement she had participated in as a young woman. He helped Andre with his homework, revealing a deep knowledge of science and mathematics that transformed the teenager's grades. And Maya noticed something else. David was pushing himself harder in his physical therapy, working to the point of exhaustion. When she asked why, he simply said, "You've given up too much for me to give anything less than my best." But the sacrifices continued. Andre's basketball camp fees went unpaid, the money diverted to David's medication. Ruth's birthday celebration became a simple homemade cake rather than the fancy dinner they had planned. Maya pawned her grandmother's pearl necklace to pay the electric bill when it came higher than expected. All of this David observed with quiet, troubled eyes. 2 months into their arrangement, a breakthrough came. During a physical therapy session, David felt a tingling in his toes, the first sensation below his chest since the accident. "Try again," Maya urged, her professional calm masking her excitement. "Try to move them." David concentrated, his face beaded with sweat from the effort. "One toe moved, just slightly, but it moved. You did it." Maya's face broke into a wide smile. "This is huge, David. It means the nerve pathways aren't completely severed. With work, you might regain more function." That night, after everyone had gone to bed, David lay awake thinking. He had maintained his anonymity partly out of caution. Years of people wanting things from him had made him suspicious, and partly out of a strange desire to see who would help David the nobody. Not David Harrington the billionaire. The answer had surprised him. This nurse, this ordinary woman with an extraordinary heart, had given up everything to help him. Her car, her education, her financial security, her family's comfort, all for a stranger who had offered nothing in return. It was time, he decided, to make a phone call, to reveal himself and make things right. But first he would give Maya one more week of just being David. One more week of the most genuine human connection he had experienced in years. What he didn't know was that across town, his attorney had finally tracked him down. After months of searching, using the limited information from the hospital records and David's tracking implant that had malfunctioned in the crash, they had located their missing billionaire. The reckoning was coming, whether David was ready or not. 3 months had passed since Maya brought David home. The calendar on the kitchen wall marked the end of her official leave from the hospital. She sat at the kitchen table, phone in hand, staring at the number for her supervisor. The conversation ahead would be difficult. "You're going to ask for an extension," David said from his bed in the living room. His voice was stronger now, his body less frail after months of dedicated therapy. Maya smiled slightly. "You always seem to know what I'm thinking." "Not always," David replied. "Just when you get that look, like you're preparing for battle." The battle in this case was financial reality. Maya's savings were gone. The leave extension would be unpaid like the first 3 months. But David's progress had been remarkable. The slight movement in his toes had expanded to limited mobility in his feet, and even some sensation returning to his legs. Dr. Wilson, who visited bi-weekly, called it unusual and promising. "I can't give up on you now," Maya said, rising to check his morning medications. "Not when you're making such good progress." "At what cost?" David asked quietly. "I've watched you sell everything of value you own. Your car, your jewelry, even your books," Maya shrugged. "They're just things." David looked around the apartment, noting the empty spaces where furniture had once stood, the bare walls where family photos had hung in frames now sold to secondhand shops. What about Andre's college fund? Ruth mentioned it yesterday. Maya's hand stilled on the pill organizer. "That's temporary. I'll build it back up once I'm working again." "And when will that be? When I'm fully recovered?" "That could be years, Maya." She met his eyes directly. "We'll figure it out." People do. Later that day, Maya sat across from her bank manager, trying to keep her expression neutral as he explained why her request for a loan had been denied. "Your credit is excellent, Ms. Johnson," he said, "but with no current income and significant recent withdrawals from your accounts, we simply can't approve this." "I understand," Maya said, though what she understood most clearly was the growing knot of fear in her stomach. The rent was due in a week. Andre needed new glasses. Ruth's medication wasn't fully covered by insurance. She took the bus home, looking out at the city streets and calculating what else she could sell. The answer was stark. Nothing of significant value remained. When she arrived home, the apartment was quiet. Andre was at his after-school job, one he had taken without telling Maya. She discovered only when his first paycheck appeared on the kitchen table with a note for David's meds. Ruth was napping, and David appeared to be sleeping as well. Maya sat heavily on the edge of the couch, now her bed, and allowed herself a rare moment of doubt. Had she made a terrible mistake? Risked her family's future for a stranger? "You're back," David said, his eyes opening. He had been watching her, she realized. "Just thinking," she said, straightening her shoulders. "About how you've run out of options?" His voice was gentle but insistent. "Maya, this can't continue. Your family is suffering. You've given too much. We're managing. No, you're drowning." David's blue eyes were intense. "Andre is working instead of focusing on school. Ruth worries constantly. And you've lost weight, you barely sleep." Maya looked away. "What would you have me do? Send you to a state facility where you'd be lucky to get basic care? Where all the progress you've made would likely be lost." "If necessary, yes," David said firmly. "I won't be the reason your family falls apart." Maya stood up, suddenly angry. "That's not your decision to make. I chose this. I believe in what we're doing. Even if it costs you everything, some things matter more than money or convenience," Maya said. "Dignity, care, seeing someone through their darkest times. Those are the things that make us human." The argument ended there, but its echoes remained. That night, Maya made a decision. She called the hospital and accepted a night shift position, one that would allow her to care for David during the day while working overnight. It meant she would get perhaps 3 or 4 hours of sleep between responsibilities, but it would bring in desperately needed income. The new routine was punishing. Maya would care for David from morning until evening, catch a few hours of sleep, work the overnight shift, and return home exhausted to start again. Dark circles formed under her eyes. She lost more weight. Her hands shook with fatigue. David watched this transformation with growing distress. One morning after Maya returned from her shift, swaying slightly with exhaustion as she prepared his medication, he made a decision of his own. "Give me your phone," he said quietly. Maya looked up, confused. "Why, please?" Just for a moment, she handed it to him, too tired to question. David took it with hands that had grown stronger through months of physical therapy. He dialed a number from memory, one he hadn't used in nearly a year. "This is David Harrington," he said when someone answered. "Authentication code 47291B. I need to speak to James Woodward immediately." Maya stared, not comprehending the significance of the name or the sudden shift in David's demeanor, the voice of quiet authority that had replaced his usual careful tone. "David?" she questioned. "What's happening?" He held up a hand, listening to the voice on the other end of the line. "Yes, I'm sure it's a surprise. I need you to come to this address immediately. And James, come alone. This is a delicate situation." He gave Maya's address and ended the call. "Who is David Harrington?" Maya asked, her tired mind struggling to keep up. "Who did you just call?" David took a deep breath. "I should have told you months ago. I'm not who you think I am." Before he could continue, there was a knock at the door. Maya looked at the clock, puzzled. "It was barely 7 a.m. That can't be whoever you called," she said. "No," David agreed. "It's too soon." Maya opened the door to find a tall, distinguished man in an expensive suit. His eyes widened slightly when he saw her. "Ms. Johnson, I'm Thomas Reynolds, lead counsel for Harrington Technologies. I believe you have our CEO." Maya felt the room sway slightly. "I don't understand. May I come in?" the man asked politely. Without waiting for an answer, he stepped past her into the apartment. When he saw David in the hospital bed, his professional composure broke. "Mr. Harrington, sir, we've been searching for you for months." Maya looked between them, pieces falling into place with devastating clarity. "David," David's eyes met hers, filled with regret and something else. Fear, perhaps, that everything between them would change with the truth. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "I should have told you." Thomas Reynolds was already on his phone, calling for a medical transport team. "Sir, we need to get you to a proper facility immediately. Your company has been in turmoil. The board has been making decisions without your input. And your sister has been beside herself with worry." David raised a hand. "Wait." His voice held the unmistakable tone of someone used to being obeyed. Reynolds fell silent. "Maya," David said, "I need to explain. Harrington Technologies is my company. I founded it 15 years ago. The motorcycle, it wasn't really a motorcycle. It was an experimental vehicle my team was developing. I was testing it personally when the accident happened." Maya sank into a chair, the implications washing over her. All the sacrifices, the financial struggle, the months of hardship, all for a man who could have paid for the best care in the world. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why didn't you tell me? Why let us go through all this when you could have—" "At first I couldn't," David said. "The accident left me confused, and I was following security protocols. Not using my real name, not contacting the company directly. But then," he paused, "then I saw how you treated me. Not as someone important or wealthy, but as a person who needed help. It had been so long since anyone had seen me that way." Maya stood up, emotions warring on her face. The room felt too small, the revelation too large. "I need some air," she said, and walked out the door. Behind her, David watched her go, understanding that the trust between them, the foundation of everything that had happened in these months, was now on shakier ground than he had ever been. Maya walked for hours, barely noticing where her feet took her. The morning sun climbed higher, traffic increased around her, but she moved through it all in a daze. Her mind replayed every moment with David, now colored by the knowledge of his true identity. The park bench where she finally sat overlooked a small pond. She watched a mother duck lead her ducklings across the water, the little ones following in perfect trust. Trust. The word echoed painfully. Her phone had been buzzing in her pocket. Now she pulled it out, 15 missed calls. Andre, Ruth, and numbers she didn't recognize. She should go home, face what waited there. But the thought made her stomach clench. A text from Andre appeared. "Mom, where are you?" "There are fancy people here. They say David is rich. Is that true?" Maya closed her eyes. How could she explain to her son what she herself could barely understand? The walk home felt both too short and endless. When she reached her apartment building, she noticed the expensive cars parked outside. A black SUV with tinted windows and a sleek silver sedan that probably cost more than her annual salary. Taking a deep breath, she climbed the stairs. The apartment door opened before she could reach for her keys. A woman she'd never seen before stood there, tall, elegantly dressed, with David's startling blue eyes. "Ms. Johnson." The woman's voice was cool but not unkind. "I'm Claire Harrington, David's sister. May we speak before you go in?" Maya nodded wordlessly. Claire stepped into the hallway, closing the door behind her. "My brother has explained some of what happened these past months," Claire said. "I want to thank you for saving his life." "I didn't know he was David Harrington," Maya said, her voice sounding strange to her own ears. "I was just doing my job." Claire's expression softened slightly. "Taking a patient into your home, selling your possessions to pay for their care. That goes far beyond any job description." Maya looked away, unwilling to accept gratitude that suddenly felt hollow. "Why are you here?" "To bring David home. To make arrangements for his continued care, with the best specialists, proper equipment." Claire hesitated. "And to make things right with you and your family." "Make things right." Maya repeated the words flatly. "You mean pay us?" Claire looked startled. "Wouldn't that help? You've suffered significant financial hardship. Money isn't the issue." Maya met the other woman's eyes directly. "He lied to us. For months, my son worked extra jobs. My mother worried herself sick. I nearly lost everything. And he just watched it happen." Claire was silent for a moment. "I can't defend what my brother did. But I think you should hear him out. He's different since the accident. Since meeting you." Inside the apartment, everything had changed in the few hours Maya had been gone. Medical equipment, newer, more sophisticated versions of what they'd been using, filled the living room. 2 nurses in crisp uniforms monitored David. A man in a business suit worked on a laptop at the kitchen table. And in the middle of it all, David lay in a new, state-of-the-art hospital bed, looking more like a stranger than he had when he truly was one. Andre and Ruth sat at the edge of the room, looking overwhelmed. When Andre saw Maya, he jumped up. "Mom, did you know? All this time he's been some tech billionaire." "I didn't know," Maya said quietly, her eyes on David. "Excuse me." She walked past everyone to her bedroom, the one place that still felt like hers, and closed the door. She was folding laundry, a mindless task to occupy her shaking hands when there was a soft knock. "Maya?" It was David's voice. "May I come in?" "They've brought a wheelchair." She opened the door. David sat in an electric wheelchair, looking pale but determined. Behind him, the apartment was empty of the strangers who had filled it earlier. "I asked them all to leave," he said, seeing her surprise. "We need to talk." Maya stepped back, allowing him to wheel into the small bedroom. They faced each other in silence for a long moment. "I don't know where to begin," David finally said. "The truth would be nice," Maya replied. "All of it this time," David nodded. "I founded Harrington Technologies when I was 25. It grew faster than anyone expected, became one of the leading renewable energy companies in the country. I became wealthy, powerful, surrounded by people who wanted something from me." He looked down at his hands. 3 years ago, I stepped back from public life. Too many sharks circling, too many agendas. I focused on research, worked directly with my engineering team on experimental projects. The vehicle I was testing, it was a new type of electric transport. The crash shouldn't have happened. And after the crash, Maya prompted, "Why keep your identity secret then?" At first, it was protocol. For security reasons, I travel with fake IDs when testing prototypes. When I woke up in the hospital, I was confused and in pain. By the time I was thinking clearly, he looked at her directly. "You were there, treating me like a person, not a bank account or a power source. It had been so long since anyone had done that. So you let us struggle, sell everything we owned, work ourselves to exhaustion. For what? To see if we'd keep being nice to poor David? No." His voice was sharp with emotion. "It wasn't like that. I told myself I needed more time to recover before dealing with the company. Then I told myself revealing my identity would ruin what we had. This family that had taken me in without knowing or caring who I was." He moved the wheelchair closer to her. "The truth, Maya? I was afraid. Afraid that once you knew who I was, everything would change. You wouldn't see me anymore, just my money, my company. You didn't trust me," Maya said quietly. "After everything, I was wrong," David admitted. "I've been wrong about a lot of things, but never about you. You are exactly who you appear to be, someone who cares more about people than things, who believes in dignity and kindness even when it costs you everything." Maya sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly tired beyond words. "What happens now?" "That depends on you," David said. "My team wants to move me to my house, bring in round-the-clock care. The company needs decisions made. Life is pulling me back in." "Then you should go," Maya said. "That's your world. What if I want both?" David asked. "The company, yes, but also this. What I found here with you and your family. The person I've become these past months." Maya looked at him skeptically. "Can you really have both?" "I don't know," David admitted. "But I'd like to try." A knock at the front door interrupted them. Maya went to answer it, finding a courier with an envelope. "Ms. Johnson?" the young man asked. "I need your signature." Puzzled, Maya signed for the envelope and opened it. Inside was a check with so many zeros that she had to sit down. "What is this?" she asked David, who had followed her to the living room. "Back pay," he said simply, "for the nursing care you provided. At top private rates." Maya stared at the check. "This is more than I'd make in 10 years. It's what you earned, what you deserve." She looked up at him, conflicted emotions crossing her face. "Money doesn't fix everything, David." "I know," he said softly. "But it can fix some things. Andre's college fund, Ruth's medical care, the apartment you sold everything to keep." Maya placed the check on the coffee table. "I need time to think." "This is all happening too fast," David nodded. "I understand. But before you decide anything, there's something else you should know." He paused. "The board of Harrington Technologies has approved funding for a new rehabilitation center at Metro General. State-of-the-art equipment, research facilities, specialized care for spinal injuries. They're looking for a director. And you want me to find someone?" Maya asked. No, David said, a small smile touching his lips. I want you to be that someone. If you want it, Maya looked at him in disbelief. I'm just a floor nurse. You're the most capable, compassionate healthcare provider I've ever known, David countered. You have the vision and heart that a place like this would need. I don't have the qualifications, you can get them, David interrupted. Go back to school, finish your degree. The position will wait. Maya shook her head, overwhelmed. Why are you doing this? David wheeled closer until they were face to face. Because you saw me when I was invisible. Because you gave everything for a stranger. Because the world needs more people like you in positions of power. He took her hand, his grip stronger than it had been in all the months she'd cared for him. I can't undo the deception, Maya, but I can try to build something better from here. Will you let me try? 2 years could change everything, Maya thought as she stood at the podium. Behind her rose the gleaming 6-story building that hadn't existed 24 months ago. The Harrington Center for Rehabilitation and Recovery. Before her sat hundreds of people, medical professionals, community leaders, patients, and their families, all gathered for the grand opening. When I was a floor nurse, Maya began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I believed that care was about the small things, the extra minutes spent listening, the hand held during a painful procedure, the dignity preserved in vulnerable moments. She glanced to her right where David sat in the front row. He no longer needed the wheelchair, though he walked with a cane. Their eyes met briefly before she continued. I still believe that. But now I know care is also about the big things. Access to cutting-edge treatments, research that pushes boundaries, facilities that serve everyone regardless of their ability to pay. She gestured to the building behind her. That's what we've created here. The journey to this moment had not been straight or simple. After David's revelation 2 years ago, Maya had needed time to process the deception, to consider his offer, to decide what she truly wanted for herself and her family. She had cashed the check he gave her, using it to reclaim what had been lost. Andre's college fund, now larger than before. A comfortable house in a good neighborhood to replace the apartment they'd nearly lost. A reliable car. The rest she set aside for the future, unsure what that future might hold. David had returned to his life. A penthouse downtown, board meetings, the weight of $1 billion company on his shoulders. But he was changed. The man who had once hidden from the world now spoke openly about his accident, used his influence to advocate for better healthcare access, pushed his company toward more humane policies. He visited often during those first uncertain months. Sometimes with proposals for the rehabilitation center, architectural plans spread across Maya's new dining table, sometimes just to see Andre and Ruth, who had forgiven his deception more easily than Maya had, always with the unspoken question in his eyes. Could they find their way back to the trust they once shared? 6 months after his departure from her home, Maya agreed to dinner at his penthouse. The view of the city was breathtaking, but it was the simple meal he had cooked himself, despite his still limited mobility, that began to melt the ice around her heart. I'm not trying to buy your forgiveness, he told her as they sat on his balcony afterward. I know it doesn't work that way. What does work that way? Maya asked. How do we get past what happened? David considered this, his face thoughtful in the city lights. Time, honesty, proving through actions, not words or money, that I've learned from my mistakes. He had been doing just that. The rehabilitation center was moving forward with Maya's input valued at every stage. He had established scholarships for nursing students from disadvantaged backgrounds. His company had implemented a caregiver's support program for employees with injured or ill family members. I miss who we were, he said quietly. Before you knew I was David Harrington. Before I was anything but a patient who needed your help. We can't go back to that, Maya said. No, but maybe we can find something new. Something better because it's built on the whole truth this time. That night marked a turning point. Maya accepted the position as future director of the rehabilitation center, agreeing to return to school for the advanced degree she would need. David arranged her schedule so she could work, study, and still have time for her family. Andre was thriving in his first year of college, his interest in engineering fostered by David, who had become something between a mentor and a friend to the young man. Ruth's health had stabilized with access to better medical care, and she had started a garden club for seniors that met in the community space of their new home. As for Maya and David, Their relationship evolved slowly, cautiously. Professional collaboration became friendship. Friendship deepened into something more complex and tender. They moved carefully, both aware of the power imbalance his wealth could create, both determined to build something authentic despite it. Now, standing before the crowd at the opening ceremony, Maya felt the weight of these two transformative years. This center represents the best of what's possible when resources meet compassion, she continued. When privilege recognizes responsibility. When seeing someone at their most vulnerable becomes not an opportunity to turn away, but to step forward and say, I am here. You are not alone. The crowd applauded as Maya introduced David, who rose to join her at the podium. He moved with the careful precision of someone who had fought hard for every step. When he reached her, their hands touched briefly, a gesture small enough to go unnoticed by most, but filled with private meaning. Thank you. Director Johnson, he said, his voice carrying across the gathering. 2 years ago, I was a patient with a spinal cord injury that doctors said would keep me permanently paralyzed. I was also a man who had forgotten what it meant to be seen for myself, not my wealth or position. He turned slightly to face Maya. One remarkable nurse changed both those prognoses. She showed me that healing comes in many forms, and that sometimes the people who save us aren't the ones with the fanciest titles or the most expensive equipment. They're the ones who refuse to give up, who sacrifice their own comfort for someone else's dignity, who see value in every human life. The center behind them gleamed in the afternoon sun, 6 floors of advanced medical technology, research laboratories, therapy spaces, and patient rooms designed with both function and comfort in mind. On the ground floor was a free clinic open to anyone, regardless of insurance status. On the top floor, a rooftop garden where patients could feel sun and wind as part of their recovery. This center will serve thousands, David continued. But it began with one patient, one nurse, and one extraordinary act of kindness. That's the foundation we've built upon. The belief that individual connection matters. That each person who comes through these doors deserves to be seen and treated with the same care that saved my life. After the ceremony, Maya found a moment alone with David in the garden. The city spread out below them and the future stretched ahead, full of possibility. Did you ever imagine this? David asked, gesturing to the center, the crowd below, the changed circumstances of their lives. Maya shook her head. Never, I just wanted to be a good nurse. You were the best nurse, David said quietly. You still are, even with director before your name. She smiled at him, remembering the first day she'd walked into his hospital room, the mysterious patient who wouldn't speak to anyone else. Do you ever regret it? The accident, the months of hiding your identity? David considered the question carefully. I regret the deception. I regret the pain it caused you and your family. He looked out over the city. But I don't regret what came of it. This center, the people it will help, the person I've become. He turned back to her. The life we're building. Maya took his hand. The past 2 years had been complicated, challenging, sometimes painful. But standing here now, she couldn't regret the journey either. Ready to go back down? She asked after a moment. David nodded. There's someone I want you to meet, a potential patient. Spinal injury similar to mine. Limited resources, excellent prognosis with the right care. Sounds familiar, Maya said with a small smile. That's the point, David replied. Every patient who comes here should get what I got from you. Someone who sees them as more than their injury, more than their bank account or social status. Someone who believes in their dignity, their potential. As they walked together toward the elevator, Maya reflected on the unlikely path that had brought them here. From a hospital room where she'd met a nameless patient, to a small apartment where she'd sacrificed everything to care for him, to this moment, creating something that would help thousands. It had begun with one simple choice, to see the person, not just the patient. To offer dignity along with care. Everything else, the center, the professional achievements, the deepening bond between them, had grown from that single seed of human connection. Some might call it chance or fate that brought David Harrington to her hospital. Maya preferred to think of it as something simpler. 2 people recognizing something valuable in each other, beyond wealth or position or circumstance. The most basic human connection, upon which everything meaningful is built.